Hey everyone, my name is Tom, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Acting Up with Tom. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be that long, and it's more of just an episode maybe for me kind of preaching to myself and talking to myself, but also to anyone watching as well. I really hope that you guys hear this important lesson. So we're going to start with one Bible verse today, really. That's going to be Judges 6, verse 12, and I'm just going to be using a regular Bible here. So Judges 6, verse 12. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him being Gideon, and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." And then we go down and we see in verse 15, and he, Gideon, said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in the Manasseh, and I'm the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man." So we're going to be talking about this today. And essentially this video is just going to be called The Call. And I know like half of my head's probably cut off. It looks kind of weird. I'm sorry about that. It's not really a professional setup, but I feel like this is a very important episode to make. The reality of the matter is that there's a lot of people out there who are called by God, and they don't fulfill their calling because they don't feel worthy or they don't feel like they're capable. You know, I've gone through this, and this is something that God had to work with me on until basically God brought up to me that ministry is not something we do ourselves. It's something he does through us. And when we're called to ministry, and anyone who's watching this called to ministry, this is just my opinion, but I feel like this, from looking in the book of Judges, is fairly biblical. We as Christians and as people called to ministry, whatever that may be, like to focus on this idea that we have to be this perfect, this well put together, completely, educated person and just be this perfect individual to be used by God in any type of ministry. When God calls us, whether that's to be a missionary, whether that's to be a pastor or do an online ministry, we can run into this issue, I feel, a lot of times as I'm not worthy. Kind of like imposter syndrome. I'm not worthy to do this. Look at these other people who are doing it, who are much better Christians than I am. Look at these people who dress better. Look at these people who do better. But the thing I think that's important to remember is that God isn't looking at us for what we see. He's looking at us for what we can be. See, when God looks at us, when we look at ourselves, we only see what we can see. When God looks at us, God sees where he can take us. Look at what happened with Gideon. God goes up to Gideon and says, "O mighty man of valor." But Midian's like, "I'm the weakest in my father's house. How am I a mighty man of valor?" God is calling some people today saying, "Hey, mighty man, mighty woman of valor, you're going to do great things in my kingdom." And our response a lot of times might be, "Mighty man, mighty woman, I'm a sinner. I mess up. I do this wrong. I do that wrong. How am I going to be used in the kingdom?" But what's important to remember, and kind of as we close this episode, is we aren't the ones doing ministry. It's not us doing stuff. It's God doing stuff through us. Now, don't get me wrong. You can't just like sit on your chair and be like, no, you can't. You can't just sit here and, days off. But what you can do is you can admit to yourself that, no, I'm never going to be perfect. No, my ministry is never going to be this perfect, beautiful thing. I'm never going to be this perfect human being. But through God, I'm going to be exactly who he needs me to be. Because sometimes those well-dressed, clean-cut, perfect-looking, well-educated people aren't going to be the people to reach certain individuals. Sometimes you might look at yourself and be like, "I don't look like those people," but you may be able to reach a group that no one else was. Remember that God is going to use you in the way that makes most sense to him and to his ministry. And that might not make sense to you why God's called you, but it makes perfect sense to him. So if God's called you to a ministry today, or at any point, don't be afraid. Talk to a spiritual leader you trust and have faith that God knows what he's doing and that God is going to mold and use you more and better than you ever thought you could be used. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.